Hey, hey, hey. Welcome back to my broadcast, my Facebook Live. I know y'all probably wondering, like, she going live again? Yeah, and I sure am. I'm going live because my beauty boot camp was a success, and that was actually a test run for me to see if I would like going live and if I wanted to do it more in the future. And it turns out I do. I'm going, and I actually have two other events planned in the future for two other live events planned. And so, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it would be a good idea to bring in someone that could talk about mental health issues that we are dealing with, that we're currently having to deal with as a result of COVID 19. Last week, when I had my broadcast at my boot camp, I had my good friend Lakeisha Woodard, who is a professional life coach, on, and Lakeisha was talking about um, how she helps individuals get unstuck in their life, in their careers, in their relationships. She kind of helps people to walk through those issues. But she made a very important point about she's not a therapist. So if you're having some severe issues or mental health issues that are causing you to be stuck, then you might need to see a therapist. Well, today you will be able to speak. Well, today we're going to have a therapist on the line with us who's going to talk about some of those kind of sneaky mental health issues that we don't really think are mental health issues, like depression and severe anxiety, PTSD, issues like that people experience, but we really don't talk about it in our community, which is the African American community, because we are taught and conditioned to just pray about everything, as we should. We should pray about everything. But while we're praying, we also should be seeking professional help for those things that are a little bit more severe than just a mild bout of I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling a little wired or crazy because of a certain situation, or we're just having life issues that we cannot handle. That's when you need to talk to a therapist. And the therapist that I am going to have on the live with me today just so happens to be my best friend. Her name is Dr. Prudence Brooks. I call her Dr. Prue. Y'all remember the therapist that used to be on TV, Dr. Drew? Well, Prue is Dr. Drew. Prue is my Dr. Drew. We call her Dr. Prue. And she's going to be on here. She specializes in issues of depression, severe anxiety, and things of that nature. And she's going to give us some information and some background about things that we should be looking for in regards to mental health issues. With COVID has been an issue that has kind of crept up on us, and if we're not careful, we'll be dealing with severe depression and issues because of the loss of a job, loss of relationships, loss of more pressure on the job as a result of the pandemic that we're dealing with, and illness, loss, grief. Those are the things that can cause you to spiral into depression. And we're going to talk about that with my friend Pruedence, Dr. Prue, today. And I'm excited about bringing her on. I've known Prue all of my life. And I tell you, we've been friends. Little fun fact: we were friends since Girl Scouts. Yeah, that's how long we've known each other. We were Girl Scouts together. And I'm 45. That was what? Almost 40 years ago that we met and became friends. She is the same quiet little little person. I'm gonna call her a little person because she really is. She's only probably about 5'2", 5 feet tall. She's a little bitty thing. Yet and still, she's very quiet beast. I would never have thought that she would have gone on to become a licensed therapist or psychologist. That's what she is, a licensed psychologist. And looking back, it only makes sense that she is a psychologist because all she does is sit back and just analyze. She will sit back and she won't say a whole lot, but please believe me, she is analyzing every scenario and every situation that you put in front of her. So without further ado, and I know you just don't want to just sit and talk to me or listen to me, I'm going to bring my best friend, Dr. Pruedence Brooks Williams, on the live, and we're going to be talking about some mental health issues that I think we all need to know about, and we need to know how to recognize them. We need to know how to cope with them, not just if they're our issues, but if they're issues that other people that you know are having as well. You need to be able to recognize this stuff so that you could possibly nudge that person and tell them, hey, you might need to go see somebody about this. You might need to get some help dealing with these issues. And it's okay. It is okay to tell your friend that they need to get help when they're dealing with issues that are beyond their scope and their knowledge and their reach. So we're going to talk about that today with my bestie, Dr. Prue. And without further ado, I'm going to bring her on now.
Hi, everyone.
I can't hear you. Yeah, you did it. Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, glad to be here. Excited.
You excited?
I am. I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited for the opportunity to talk more about mental health because I really think that that's something that's really critical. And a lot of people just, they only know maybe what they see on TV, or a lot of it's just don't understand. And so I'm happy and excited to be here to talk about it a little more so that people are more informed and they know, like, okay, maybe I'm not just sad, maybe there's a little bit more to it, and because the more we know, the better the chances are that we can do something about it and feel better. So yes, very exciting.
Good. I want to start by asking, I think the main thing is defining it so that people know how to recognize it. When would you say that a person might be dealing with some mental health issues? And before you answer that, I want to reiterate the fact that during this pandemic, people are losing their jobs. They're being pressed for cash, even though they may or may not have gotten a stimulus check or whatever the case may be. They're being kept in the house, and there's cabin fever, not able to connect with their family, their friends, and don't know how to talk to or check up on people that may be far away from them and they can't get to them. And that's causing all kinds of anxiety issues and possibly depression. So how would you tell someone else to recognize signs and symptoms of some issues that may be causing like some mental health issues?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think that, well, that's a good question. So thanks. But I think that it's really important for people to understand the difference between, feeling like I'm just sad right now, and this is something a little bit more than that. This is now starting to creep into depression, because for sadness, everybody gets sad at some point. All of us, for one reason or another, all of us get sad about something.
Mm-hmm.
Depression, though, is something totally different, and it's important to understand what it is, because if a person has had like even one depressive episode, the chances are that that's going to be a recurring thing, and that'll happen again in the future. And it's something that has answers. It has solutions. There are things that we can do so that we don't feel like that. But if we don't even recognize that that's what's wrong, that that's what's happening, that it's gone beyond just sadness, then we're powerless to manage it. So, so the difference. So sadness, I think we kind of all know about what sadness is. So I'm gonna take it. So I'll explain more about the difference between that and depression. So if somebody is depressed, it's like in a 2-week period, several things might be going on. So one, obviously sadness is a symptom of depression. So people feel sad, they feel down, but they can't shake it. It's hard to get it off. No matter what you try to do, it's hard to get it off. It might get a little better for a few hours or for a day or so, but it comes back and it's hard to get rid of it. So sadness is one. And kind of another one too is irritability. Just like being in a bad mood. And sometimes people think I'm just annoyed. I'm just in a bad mood.
But when
But
you annoyed all the time and
but
everybody's getting on your nerves. That's
yes,
ooh, I know some people like that. Like no matter what you talk about, if you bring up any situation, oh my God, it's just like girl.
irritable. Yes. And so for depression, it's a combination.
That's just how that person is, but that's not. You're saying it's more to it.
Right. I'm saying it's more to it if it's that in combination with some other things. If it's that by itself, then maybe. But if it's that in addition to they are sad or so the irritability or anger, like in kids, it's more anger. Like if I see an angry child in the back of my mind, I'm wondering what's underneath that? Is there some sadness underneath there? So that's another symptom of it. Sleep, like sleeping way too much. Just sleep, and no matter how much you get, you're still tired.
That's a big red flag. I see that in some people that love to sleep all the time and they think that it's okay. It's not, especially when you're sleeping more than like 8 hours. Like I know people who sleep 12-hour days, and I mean, 12 hours a day, that's a lot. I mean, yeah, that's
it is. Yes,
okay.
And that is a symptom of it. And the same, sleeping too much or not getting enough sleep. So also a symptom is when you can't sleep.
Right.
Right.
Often, probably.
What's that?
In the middle of the night, often?
Yes. It kind of, I hesitate because we can talk about it another time, but it's some overlap with anxiety too, which is a whole other thing. But so yes, waking up in the middle of the night could be an indication of being a symptom of depression. Appetite, eating too much, not eating enough food is a problem. Concentration problems, forgetting stuff, like really being accident prone, is another. Feeling guilty, like blaming yourself for stuff that isn't even your fault. They call it like inappropriate guilt. And another one is
can't stay focused. Didn't you mention when a person can't stay focused for long?
Yes. Yeah, having trouble focusing and paying attention. And it's associated too with ADHD, but it's different in depression. So like they might be watching TV and the TV is going, but it's really watching them. They're not watching it, right? You're just sitting there, even like a TV show that you really enjoy. It's hard to like stay focused on it and just kind of pay attention, or like reading a book or something like that. You read a page and if somebody asks you what you just read, you have no idea. You can't remember what it was you just read. So problems like concentrating and forgetting a lot of stuff, losing things a lot. Those kind of, because you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And kind of related to that too, people like tripping over stuff or having accidents, those kind of things too, because you're not focused, you're not concentrating, paying attention, it's much more likely to happen. One other one, the last one I'll say, that's really important are suicidal thoughts. Now, everybody knows like active, because two different types. So like active suicidal thoughts are what everybody thinks of, where, somebody says, tomorrow with this is what I'm going to do to myself. Less well known is called like passive suicidal thoughts. And those are really important too. It's where people sort of have thoughts like, things would be easier if I weren't here, or I wish I was never born. And sometimes clients will ask me, like, isn't it normal to just have thoughts like that? No, it is not normal. And if you are starting to think like that, that is indicates or strongly suggests that you are losing hope, that you've given up, that you don't have answers for the struggles and situations that you're going through. And so that is kind of what will bring those suicidal thoughts. So I think it's important that people just kind of have that information to know, or to be able to at least start thinking about, like, wait a minute,
And recognize it.
these things are happening. Maybe I need to just go talk to a therapist to see.
Right.
And maybe they'll say yes, or maybe they say it isn't. But at least you kind of have a little bit of information so you can know to go check it out.
What about like triggers? Because would you say grief typically triggers depression? I can say, I'm asking.
Uh-huh.
I'm asking, I don't know, but I'm telling you with my own personal situation, you know, the loss of my mother. I even went through my divorce. And during those times, that was kind of hard for me, having to deal with all these different life changes that were happening at once. And I had my own personal bout with depression and didn't even realize it and recognize it until later on. But I would, my question to you would be like, what are some triggers that would cause possibly a person to lapse or relapse even after they've had treatment or whatever? What are the things that you think could cause that people need to be aware of? Like, it's going to take them into those deep little bouts.
It's hard to say because, well, for one, because everybody's different.
Right.
And then for depression, actually, it doesn't need a trigger. There can be ones like, yes, the loss of somebody who we love. Any kind of traumatic thing can happen to trigger that. Loss in terms of people passing away, or loss through divorce, or loss of a child, loss of any of these, a job, especially now with all of these things going on with COVID, and it's still happening, and we don't have treatment for it yet. So loss in a whole lot of ways, loss of our social network, like all of those things can contribute to it, and they can trigger a response. But for people who knowingly or not, if you've had a depressive episode before, then it doesn't need a trigger. It's a biological thing that's happening. And so it can just be without a reason, which is why in some cases, medication can be helpful for people as a treatment. Medication can be helpful because if there's not a trigger for it, then, you know, if it's a problem or an issue, you can talk about that issue. You can figure out what the issue is. You can talk about it. You can work through it. You can heal from it. But if you don't have that, it's just a biological thing. Oftentimes it's genetics. But for whatever reason, when that happens, sometimes I think medication is helpful because it sort of undoes some of those biological things that happen.
Speaking of which, I'll never forget the time that we had this conversation about someone who was dealing with some extreme mental health issues. And I know that medication for you is like a last resort. You want to see if they could talk it through first before it gets
most of the time, yes.
Yeah, most of the time. Well, in this particular case, you were like, "Oh, this is extreme. He needs medication." He doesn't even know he will feel better once he gets off this.
Yes, I do recall this conversation. Yes.
So I'm saying this to say, at what point do you feel it is absolutely necessary to prescribe medication for situations where people are dealing with like either depression, or I want you to talk about anxiety as well, because anxiety is definitely a mental health issue that can cause all kinds of other problems as well. So tell me at what point you think that people need to consider medication, and understand that it's necessary for them to feel like more level-headed and, you know, calm, and, you know, it'll relax them and get their mental processes right.
Yeah, that's a good question too, and one that I even in my practice is one that I I have trouble sometimes getting people to understand because they say, well, hey, I'm coming to talk to you. You fix it. So they struggle to understand, right, how certain things can be helped
Yeah.
with just kind of talking things through. But there are times where medication is absolutely necessary. So like if somebody is coming to me, if they just got out of the hospital, chances are I'm gonna say this is something you have to keep taking it, and in order for us to work together, because if they are um, crying throughout the whole hour, it's no way that we can talk through
Right.
and work through things. Certain things require it, like if somebody's having psychosis, if you're hearing voices or seeing things, the only thing that works for that, if that's um, it happens for different reasons. So if it's like a medication or something that's causing it, that's different. But if it's like psychosis that's part of a mental health problem, then those things aren't going to go away. There's no talking them down. There are things that we talk to people about to help them like deal with and cope and that kind of thing. But seeing things and hearing things or feeling things like crawling on your body, like those kinds of experiences, only medication will make those stop.
Uh,
So those are some examples where it has to be medicine. But what I try to do though is if it's severe, then I'm pretty much gonna be stuck on no, this is kind of what we need to do.
mhm.
Um, I guide people in that way. But if it's more mild and a little bit moderate, uh, I will suggest some herbal.
Mhm.
I'll suggest like some herbal remedies, but I'm cautious about it. Especially, I'm cautious about it because, those take a little bit longer. If somebody is like moderate, closer to severe, then I'm not going to say that because, people medication really gets a bad rap,
Mhm.
but depending on the level of severity, you don't have to be on medication all the time.
Yeah.
It might be something that you just need to get you through
Mhm.
this moment. And then once you get past this, you can taper off and you don't have to be on it anymore. And so, mhm.
So my question is, one word that get tossed around a lot, and it definitely affects your mental health, and that is bipolar. Can you give us some really good examples of who is? I mean, a person who suffers from bipolar. What exactly is that? Because I think we use that a little bit too loosely, and some people may not necessarily be bipolar. They just may be, I guess, extra or just a little bit high strung, but some people may be bipolar and not realize they are bipolar. Define what parameters would cause a person to actually be diagnosed with bipolar.
Mhm. So for this one, I agree. These days, for whatever reason, that word, not only do people just use it, but even in like professional practice, it gets so overdiagnosed,
Mhm.
especially in teenagers and younger kids. I think it gets overdiagnosed because their behaviors become difficult to manage. And it's easy to say you have bipolar and put you on this medicine because those medicines are going to calm that down. But I think that yes, it gets overdiagnosed and people just kind of use it loosely. So what it is, in a nutshell, it's a lot of things. But briefly, I'll say that bipolar is so in order to have it, you have to have had a depressive episode. So
Mhm.
all of those things that I said earlier about depression, at least one in your lifetime, an episode of depression. And then it also is where, so it's depressive symptoms or manic symptoms. And
Mhm.
mania, those look like anger, and I mean, like, not because everybody gets angry, right?
Mhm.
This anger is extreme. And whoever is seeing it and experiences it realizes like this person is like really, really mad.
Yeah.
Not only really angry, it's hard to bring them down and
Uh,
like reason and logic in the moment. it's hard for them to hear and comprehend and understand and use reason to not be so angry. And in this anger, they do extreme things that the average person wouldn't do in terms of how they handle it. Or like, on a job, like if somebody comes to me and they say, over the last 10 years, I've had, 25 different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna wonder. That's gonna make me start my line of questioning down that road. Does that mean they have it? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But anger, because it's hard for them to get along with people. So on a job, and not just on their job, but usually you see it with family members where, I try to look for support and where can I get support from in family and their social environment. And when I ask that question, they have had it out with a whole lot of different people for a lot of different reasons, and it's a long history of that. So it's irritability. The mania can be several things. So the mania can be it's more of like a heightened experience. So anger could be one of them, but it can also be very happy, very, very happy. Not a normal happy. We all get happy, right? But they are elated. They are really, really excited. To the point where they can do like dangerous things or engage in like really risky and dangerous behaviors like driving a fast car, or sometimes you see like hypersexuality or not having safe sex with like a whole lot of people, something that is not within their normal personality. This is something that is happening only because they're in this manic place. So mania is more of a heightened state of being,
which makes them dangerous in most situations.
Dangerous, engaging in things that can make go to jail or shopping sprees, like that kind of stuff. But it only happens when they're feeling like that. Another symptom of it is for bipolar is sleep. So when I talk to somebody, if they told me that they can, if they can go 2 or 3 days without sleeping and not be tired and be at full energy, or maybe get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, then to me that's an indication of a manic episode, and so I need to look a little bit closer because it's possible that they are bipolar.
Or some type of drug that would
do it.
Yes.
Interesting that you say that, because substance abuse is a huge thing in people who are bipolar. Now, not that everybody who uses drugs is bipolar. That is absolutely not the case. But in people who are bipolar, it's hard for them. It's really hard because now they're up and now they're down again. And so if they're not going to the regular doctor to be treated, they use street drugs that in some ways, although they're bad, street drugs are bad, but certain things help to bring them down, or certain things help to lift them up. And so they can become addicted because they're using street drugs as a medication. So substance abuse is a huge, huge problem for people who are bipolar. And also psychosis, hearing things hearing voices, just being paranoid, thinking people are out to get them, seeing things that aren't there, having physical experiences, feeling like, spiders are crawling on them, and those kinds of things too. They don't always happen. The psychosis doesn't always happen. But those other things that I mentioned, that's just a few of them. There are several others, but
that usually happens when people who are addicted to things, like there's a high probability that usually people with those type of addictions, drug addictions, substance abuse addictions, they experience those things like psychosis and so forth.
No. I was just saying that psychosis is a symptom of bipolar.
Oh, okay.
No, drugs do all kinds of things. I mean, there are certain types of drugs, yes, that will give that, but no, drugs do a lot of different things.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of different things.
So let's talk about anxiety. anxiety as a mental issue, a health issue, because that's a big, big thing. And I want you to explain like simple anxiety, like, oh, I have a job interview today. I don't know what to do. And I'm kind of anxious. That's like normal, right?
Yes.
At what point is anxiety a bad thing? And it's like, oh my gosh, you reached into another level of anxiety. And that's where your mental health may be compromised at some point. So explain that.
Yes. So, and it's kind of a word language issue. So like if you lose your job, or no, if you're so if you have like a job interview or something like that, then that is actually worry. You're worried about it. And you might have, I'll take that back. You might have some anxiety like in your stomach where you feel like butterflies or tension, those kinds of things. So that is anxious. But like diagnostically, like for somebody to come, if they're going to be diagnosed with anxiety, they will, because everybody worries, right? We all worry about a whole lot of different things. That is a normal human emotion. But worrying that we can't control it, we can't stop the worrying, and it throughout our day. We can't sleep at night. I was talking about before how those two are sort of related. Like early morning awakenings, like just getting up throughout the night, hard to fall asleep, hard to stay asleep. Those kinds of things are anxiety. But it's not just having that feeling. It's where you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a ton of things like on your mind. And it doesn't even have to be like the stressful things. It could also be tomorrow, I got to do this, I got to do that. Did I remember to do this? Like it doesn't always have to be specific things to the stressor, but if it's waking you up at night and you're rolling through, like what all I need to do today, did I not get that done yesterday? If that's keeping you up on a recurring basis and you can't stop it from happening, then you're probably tiptoeing into something that might be considered anxiety. But it also has like physical symptoms associated with it too. Like tension, like people with like tension in their neck, or if you clench your teeth a lot, or like closing your fist, like it's physical stuff. So if you don't really notice it, and for some reason you're physically exhausted, if your muscles have been like tense a lot throughout the day, that too can be a symptom of anxiety. So it's a lot of things related to that. Those are just a few of them.
So I guess the most important thing that we need to discuss is like coping mechanisms. Like if you may not be ready for therapy yet. However, you do exhibit some of these symptoms and signs to a certain degree, or you know someone who does. What are some suggestions that you could give people to help them cope and to deal, especially during these times of COVID and the pandemic? People need to understand, you know, we at some point we know somebody who's dealing with either anxiety, depression, or bipolar in some area. How can they cope? What's a good way? What's a good coping mechanism to help? Therapy isn't an option just yet, and then we'll get on that part.
Okay. All right. I think that one or the most important, and I know all people kind of think differently about this, but is our faith. Like that is a really, really good coping skill. And I can sometimes notice the difference, like in my work, with people who are able to lean on their faith and people who don't believe. I'm not telling anybody they need to believe or in one way or another, but I'm saying that in my experience, being able to have faith in God and being able to lean on that is really, really beneficial.
That's right.
Because if therapy isn't something that you want to do, you have to, I mean, we can do nothing without God. And so if we're in our deep, dark place where we're drowning and we're at that tough place and we don't really know what to do or how to get out of it, you know, we got to be able to say, greater is he that is within me. We got to be able to say, you know, that I'm more than a conqueror. You got to be able to have those things already. One time, it's been a long time ago, I heard a preacher say something about how, however many scriptures you know, like off the top of your head, that is how many bullets you have in your gun to defeat the enemy, or to fight anything that you're struggling with. And
That's a
so I
good
think
word.
that certainly our faith and just knowing that we have God that we can depend on when nobody else is there, when there's nothing we can do, that, or we feel like we can do, that is something. So I think that is a really, really important coping skill. Um, Others, like more, which is probably more your question about like more uh, behavioral kind of things to do to cope. Some of the ones maybe people have probably said already, just in general, that you've read anywhere if you've been looking into this, is like exercise. It really is helpful. It really does make you feel better. And now if you work out one time, no, you're not. But if you do it over a period of time, it really is good for your mental health. Like physical things are happening inside of our bodies that make that something that's really, really beneficial.
Right.
And so exercise is one. Getting out of the house is also one. I'm not ready to venture out and go out, but I will go back on my patio
Yeah.
and just kind of sit out there, and just so that I can be out of the house is also a really good thing. It's also helpful to turn off the news. It's the same conversation anyways, for the most part, and it's a lot of negative. So we have to be really cautious of the information that we are allowing into our minds. So I don't watch the news. I keep up with, the numbers here and there and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm very particular about what my incoming is. If that, even like movies I watch, or definitely even like people who are around me, a lot of negative energy is not helpful. And so I don't, even in my personal life, I don't like the negative energy. And so I sort of move back away from that. And already, if somebody is struggling with, if you have like depression or anxiety or bipolar or any of those things, and you're surrounding yourself with all of this negativity,
Right.
nowhere to go but down. And
Right.
so it's important to be really, really mindful of that and take an inventory of that for ourselves, so that we can see, maybe our environment or the people that we allow ourselves to be around have something to do with why we can't get up. Maybe you don't need medication. Maybe you need to sort of take another look at the people in your circle. That, I mean, it's a number of things that it could contribute to, but I'm just saying that is an important part of it.
Yes.
Um,
I agree with that. Once you start filtering, that will make a tremendous difference in your state of mind, especially if you're around people who are aggressive or abrasive or negative. All that energy is being filtered down to you, and that can help you. That can't help but to make you feel either anxious or angry or some type of cynical way. I agree with that completely.
yeah. And another thing that I have, more so for anxiety and kind of sleep, but another one thing that I've been telling my clients about is this app called Calm, CALM.
That doesn't it? I've never used it, but doesn't it help you with like sleep and meditation? Meditation helps you
It
with
does.
yeah.
Yes, it does a lot of different things. Yes, those kinds of things. And it might send you like daily messages and stuff like that. But I like it. They have it like a free one, which has all of the stuff on there
Yeah.
that I think is helpful.
Okay.
But you pay for it too. But I like that app, and a lot of my clients that I've sent to it also have enjoyed it.
Also, like filtering like the music that you listen to. If all
Yes.
into a hardcore like metal, heavy metal rap and all that,
Yep.
F the police and all that kind of stuff, then you're gonna feel that. You're gonna
Yeah.
feel, and I mean, all that negativity is going to get into your spirit, and that's it's gonna keep you in a bad space, in a bad mental space, a bad head space. So I agree with that completely. So you said meditation and what about like pets? Like I know a lot of people who have service pets. I know a lot of people who have service pets, and I
Mhm.
really thought that there was a thing until I met a person once before when I told them you can bring your dog in here. This is my service pet.
Yes.
So, but I mean, some people need those. So hey, it
Yes.
does make a difference.
In certain situations, yes, that certainly, and now is certainly becoming more of a thing. And some people, it really does. I see a lot of um, some of our older adults too. And so loneliness and all of those kinds of things that they deal with, it is really remarkable how things can change for them by having like something to take care of, a dog or a cat or some kind of pet or something, even a plant actually. It's been a lot of research on these types of things, and even plants, just something to
Plants
take care of can be helpful.
absorb negative energy too, though. Like certain plants, I thought.
What's that?
Plants are supposed to be known. Certain plants are supposed to absorb certain negative energy. I don't know what it is, but I've read that before. I don't know, but I will say this about the pet thing. Speaking of like, my brother with his anger issues, we got rid of his dog one time. When I tell you, he went crazy.
Yeah.
It wasn't prescribed, but it was just the point. That was his service pet. Actually,
Yes.
he loved that pet, and it helped him. When he had his dog with him, he was a completely different person. You took that dog away, you had a whole problem.
Right? Because animals can love us in ways that other people can't. They
Right.
will always be there. They are loyal. You don't have to worry about trust issues. They are there for us. So yes,
Yeah.
I think people who are animal lovers and who have animals understand that, that's just a genuine love. It's nice to have somebody when you come home that's like really excited to
Yeah.
see you, like jumping up and down and happy and excited. And so,
Without
yeah.
criticism, talking back, you can't tell me what you like and what you don't like. All you're here to do is just love on me. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not even a lover, but I get it.
Yes.
Whatever helps, whatever helps. So what advice would you give to someone who in my last live, my friend who's a life coach said that she comes to help people to get out of being stuck, but you're the person that they need to talk to before they even get to that point of trying to figure out their next move of where they're going to be. You help them get to process their issues that they're dealing with, the psychological part, the emotional things. So what advice would you give to people who possibly are considering therapy, or when do you think it is best for a person to seek therapy? When? At what point in their life?
Yes. And so the answer to that is when, well, there's a lot. It's hard to say, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think about that.
Okay.
um, when all of the coping skills that you have that you're normally able to depend on, when those aren't working for you, you need to think about stepping outside of that and considering therapy. If you have been in a bad mood for a month, that's not normal. Something is wrong. You need to think about reaching out to somebody. We stay in like really, really difficult emotional situations for such a long time. And we're often reluctant to do it because we might think, oh, people are going to say I'm crazy and those kind of things. And so it stops us from kind of reaching out and wanting to get help. But it really is something important. Another way to know is sometimes we can't see it in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if your family, if your friends are saying, you just seem off, something's not right, something's going on with you, it's not okay, I've been worried about you lately, listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just try to dismiss whatever it is they're saying. It'll be hard, but sit there and listen. Hear, allow yourself to be open to hear. These are the people who know you and love you. Let them tell you, this is what I see. This is what is different. this is what I don't understand. This is a concern, and I think it's really something that you need to look into.
Okay, so in the African American community, we are not likely to go and see therapists like we should. A lot of times it has to do with financial reasons. So, what alternatives can if let's say someone says, me personally, I've gone through my job when I needed to. I have insurance, so through my medical insurance, I've been able to see a therapist. But if a person doesn't have insurance, if they don't have the means, what are some other alternatives to therapy can they consider so that they can get the help that they need? Because a lot of times people just can't afford therapy, but they should not be turned away from help if they're dealing with mental health issues such as these. So, how can they get the help that they need?
Mm-hmm. There is always pro bono help. It's always there. Since I've been away from Longview for so long, like I don't know where it is there, but it's always available. Like agencies like MHMRA, those kind of agencies are a good first step in just kind of getting connected to somebody and those resources, and then they can hook you up with.
Community health corps, I would say. Community health corps for those who are in Longview. But what about in Houston? Do you know of some agencies there? They could just look for pro bono mental health agencies or so forth. They could Google that and possibly get the help that they need.
Absolutely. So MHMRA is one of them here in Houston that they can go to kind of get the ball rolling and get the process started. But it's a lot of them. That's just one. And even like if it's something that they are dealing with, like that's farther than that, you can start with something like if somebody's having like suicidal thoughts or something like that. You can start with like 1-800-SUICIDE and to kind of call and talk through, and they will help you find resources. You can go online as well and do searches on things like Psychology Today, goodtherapy.org, those types of sites too. And you can, if you have the internet, and you can filter for pro bono or like community agencies, but they exist. And now with COVID, so they exist wherever you are. But yes, it's an issue of accessing it and knowing that it's there. And now with COVID, they have really, it was since like March, they've really turned around what mental health treatment looks like. Like the insurance companies, it's been turned upside down in a positive way. So now people are better able to access resources. You can do it on the telephone now. Insurances wouldn't pay for that before. But if they don't have insurance, you can still do it over the phone. There are more options too, like I say, for face-to-face or now online as a whole. Of course, since we're social distancing, online too is an option for people.
Okay. Okay. Well, are there any last thoughts and tips that you want to give about mental health and why it's important? I think it's important that people understand why we should be bringing awareness to this, because people don't understand it's that silent killer that we don't really talk about. You know, because people who have mental health issues, they can go out and bomb a building, they can shoot up schools, they can do all these things because nobody recognized that little Johnny had a mental health issue that nobody was dealing with. Now everybody was just saying that's just how he is, instead of saying, okay, something ain't right about little Johnny. We need to look at that closely. Right. And deal with that issue. So, I mean, speaking to a therapist, I'm wanting you to speak on that so that people understand why it's important, why we need to be addressing mental health issues, because it can snowball into something way bigger than what you think.
It can, and it really is important. And I think a lot of the reason why it doesn't happen sometimes, although I will say this, in the Black community, it is increasing. It's not anywhere close to where it needs to be, but it is increasing some. I think that like historically we're taught like to be the strong Black woman or strong Black man, or don't cry, and we're taught to disconnect from our emotions in this way and just be tough.
Yeah.
No, if you feel like crying, cry. You know, if you feel like screaming, scream. You know, if you are hurt, then you know you can't heal what you can't feel. Allow yourself to experience like whatever those things are so that you can begin to work through them. And I think that's a really important thing. I also think that our reluctance to seek treatment, um, one of the things that I have to say about that too is that people are quick to go to the doctor. Like if you break your arm, you know, if you break your arm, you are gonna go to see a physician for that.
Yeah.
But we need to also, if your heart is broken, if you are going through if you are sad and you can't stop being sad, if you are worried and stressed, and every day is heavy, every day, literally, every day is a burden, and you can't manage that weight. You can only do it for a certain time and then it can be crash and burn. But, you know, if you get to that point, recognize that it is help out there. And so, like I was saying, you know, we go to a physician when our arm is broken, our leg is broken, but when our hearts are broken, when we're hurting, you know, we need to consider going to see a psychologist or some type of therapist, because it's an invisible one, right? Kind of how you were saying, it's unseen, but it is just as critical, if not more. The fact that you can't necessarily see it makes it even more serious, even more important. And it's important too because for depression, for example, if you catch it before the episode really gets started, you can decrease the number of days that you're depressed, or the length of time. You can decrease it if you're aware of it and you know, like, wait a minute, this is happening. This is happening. You know, I haven't been sleeping. I've really been sad. I've been isolating myself from people. Everybody is getting on my nerves. Like, you know, if you realize those things are happening, if you can jump on it, then you can stop yourself from having this depressive episode. And you can learn those things from a therapist. You can read in books and all of that, and that is helpful too. But when the burden becomes too heavy, and no matter how many books you read or movies you watched, or you know, all of those things you've done,
A trained professional to help you work through the sadness, the grief, the loss, the anxiety, the addictions, all those things. They need professional help, and possibly in some cases, like you said, medication. You might need those things, like you said about the other situation, to feel better. That's important. Now, and medication under a trained professional that can monitor it, can monitor your intake of the medication that you're taking to be able to recognize when it's too much or not enough. That type of information. That's what needs to be done. So I thank you for this information, because I think it's important that we recognize. When I was dealing with my issue, it took me a while to realize that I needed therapy. But when I finally did, I felt so much better. Just being able to talk to an unbiased party, being able to tell someone without having to tell my friends, without having to tell family, they're only going to be able to help you so much. That's when a trained professional comes in, and a third party that's unbiased, that doesn't know you, your life, or your issues, that can help you talk you through those issues or those pain points that you're dealing with.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Prue. Do you remember that Dr. Drew? Dr. Drew that used to come on TV?
Vaguely, yes.
You're Dr. Prue. You're the female version of him, Dr. Prue. So thank you, friend. I think that was a great broadcast. I think this was informative and enlightening. And I think that a lot of people ought to be able to get some gems from it by knowing how to recognize when you may be dealing with like depression, anxiety, and bipolar for sure. Because we We deal with bipolar people on a regular basis and not really realizing that that's what that is. But not only that, just during these rough times and these uncertain times of COVID-19, we need to be able to recognize some things that just aren't normal. That we ought to be to take a step back if we're experiencing this or dealing with it. This is what we need to possibly look at and deal with so that we can handle it moving forward or address it as need be. So thank you again. And any last words? How can they find you? How can they, do you have your website or a telephone number or anything that a person can get to connect to you if they need to reach out to you for help?
Sure. My website is www.drprudencebrooks.com. And you can put it up on the screen.
There you go. It's without the DR period, but www.prudencebrooks.com. And that's how to spell her name, Pruedence. And Brooks, Dr. Pruedence Brooks. I'll put it up here so that you guys can see. And if you need a therapist, here, you got one right here. www.drprudencebrooks.com. There we go. So
Brooks with an S.
Oh, my bad. I'm always messing up. There we go. So, sure. There we go. drprudencebrooks.com. So if you need a therapist, you need to talk to somebody, or if you need to refer somebody, because a lot of times people don't want to acknowledge or recognize that they have issues, but you may recognize it in someone else. So if you do, you can just shoot them this information and say, hey, you ought to talk to this person about your problems, especially if they're telling you about some things that you feel like they need to speak with a professional about. Here you go. You got a professional. So thanks, Prue, and we are out. Until next time. Next time we'll talk about addictions. That's what we need to really be talking about. Because I know some people with some issues and you need help. You need to get off of that lean. You need to get off of that, whatever it is, that stuff that's inhibiting your mental state. So we'll talk about that another day. But until then, enjoy your Sunday and peace out, everybody. Bye, Facebook. So I just wanted to thank everybody who got on to the show today. I appreciate you for logging in. I appreciate you for watching, and tune in next week. We're going to have another show, and then coming up on Memorial Day, I have a big surprise, a big interview that I have scheduled and planned that I can't wait. Can't talk about it yet, but I will soon. So until then, I'll see y'all later. Peace out, and thanks again.